Welcome back, everyone. Tonight we delve into the darkest corners of the night, where shadows dance and fear reigns supreme. We have three spine-chilling true stories from people who experience the sheer terror of the unknown during their night shifts. Turn off the lights, sit back, and prepare to be scared. These are their stories. Our first story takes us to the desolate outskirts of a forgotten town, where a lone security guard named Jake found himself face to face with the inexplicable. It was a job like any other, patrolling the echoing corridors of an abandoned factory. The air hung heavy with the silence of ages, broken only by the rhythmic thud of Jake's boots against the cracked concrete floor. Each step seemed to reverberate through the emptiness, a constant reminder of his isolation. The flickering fluorescent lights cast long, grotesque shadows that danced and swayed with his every move, transforming familiar shapes into menacing phantoms lurking at the edge of his vision. The biting night air seeped through the building's crumbling facade, sending shivers down Jake's spine. He clutched his flashlight tighter, its beam cutting a fragile swathe of illumination through the oppressive darkness. He had heard the rumors, whispered among the locals in hushed tones. Stories of a foreman who met a grisly end within these very walls, his spirit forever bound to the site of his demise. But Jake, a man of logic and reason, dismissed them as mere superstition. Until now. As he rounded a corner, his flashlight beam caught a fleeting glimpse of movement at the far end of the hallway. A tall, gaunt figure shrouded in shadow stood motionless in the doorway. His heart pounded against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the eerie silence. He strained his eyes, but the figure remained indistinct, obscured by the impenetrable gloom. Fear, cold and paralyzing, gripped him in its icy claws. "Hello?" Jake's voice, hoarse and thin, echoed through the empty hallway, swallowed by the oppressive silence. The figure didn't move. It simply stood there, a spectral sentinel guarding the secrets of the abandoned factory. Mustering a surge of courage, Jake moved closer, his flashlight beam trembling in his grasp. As he approached, he could have sworn he heard a faint, mournful sigh, like the whisper of wind through a graveyard. Step by hesitant step, he drew nearer, the figure looming larger and larger in his field of vision. It was then that he noticed its eyes, two glowing embers burning with an eerie, otherworldly light. Time seemed to grind to a halt. Jake stood frozen, his breath caught in his throat, as the specter slowly began to raise its arm. With a suddenness that shattered the tense silence, the figure lunged forward, its mournful wail echoing through the desolate halls. Jake stumbled backward, his flashlight tumbling from his grasp and plunging the hallway into absolute darkness. He turned and ran, his heart pounding against his ribs, the specter's chilling scream ringing in his ears. He didn't dare look back, his mind conjuring images far more terrifying than anything he had ever witnessed. He burst out of the factory and into the cold night air, gasping for breath, his body trembling uncontrollably. The darkness that surrounded him seemed to pulse with an unseen energy, the air thick with the weight of unseen eyes. From that day forward, Jake refused to set foot inside the abandoned factory. The memory of that night, the ghostly figure and its haunting scream, remained seared into his mind, a terrifying reminder of the unseen forces that lurk in the shadows. The abandoned factory stood as a silent testament to his encounter, a chilling monument to the mysteries that lie beyond the realm of human understanding. Our next tale takes us to the sterile and brightly lit halls of Mercy Hospital, where a young nurse named Sarah was about to experience a night shift unlike any other. It was a night like any other, filled with the steady rhythm of beeping machines, hushed whispers, and the soft glow of bedside lamps. Sarah, her heart filled with the noble calling of her profession, made her rounds, checking on her patients, offering comfort and care. Among them was Mr. Davis, an elderly gentleman admitted for a persistent cough and shortness of breath. He was a kind soul, his eyes twinkling with a gentle humor that belied his frail health. Sarah had grown fond of Mr. Davis, his gentle demeanor and quiet strength resonating with her. She would often linger by his bedside, sharing stories and laughter, a brief respite from the often harrowing realities of the hospital. As the night wore on, the hospital settled into an uneasy quiet. The usual bustle of doctors and nurses had dwindled to a skeleton crew, the silence broken only by the occasional murmur of voices over the intercom. Sarah completed her rounds, a sense of unease settling over her. It was during her final check that she noticed something was amiss. She approached Mr. Davis's room, her heart sinking as she saw his bed was empty. The sheets were neatly tucked in, the bedside lamp casting a warm glow over the vacant space. Panic surged through her. Where could he be? Mr. Davis was too weak to walk, let alone leave his room unnoticed. Her mind raced, a whirlwind of possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. She frantically searched the room, her eyes darting from corner to corner, hoping for a clue, a sign, anything that could explain his sudden disappearance. She checked the bathroom, the closet, even under the bed, her heart pounding with a growing sense of dread. He was gone, vanished without a trace. She alerted the other nurses, their faces etched with concern as they fanned out across the floor, their hushed whispers echoing through the empty hallways. They searched high and low, their anxieties mounting with each passing moment. The hospital, once a sanctuary of healing, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows, its sterile walls closing in on them. They checked the stairwells, the elevators, even the roof, their hopes dwindling with every passing minute. Mr. Davis was nowhere to be found. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the hospital windows, they were forced to confront a chilling reality. Mr. Davis had vanished into thin air. The police were called, their investigation yielding no answers. Security cameras showed no sign of Mr. Davis ever leaving his room. The mystery of his disappearance remained unsolved, a haunting enigma that cast a shadow over Mercy Hospital. Sarah, forever marked by that night, carried the weight of Mr. Davis's disappearance in her heart. She often found herself staring at his empty bed, haunted by the memory of his kind eyes and gentle smile. The experience left an indelible mark on her soul, a chilling reminder that even in the most ordinary of places, the inexplicable can occur, leaving us grappling with questions that may never be answered. Chapter 3. Our final story of the night takes us to the brightly lit aisles of a 24-hour convenience store on a desolate highway, where a young clerk named Chris was about to have an encounter he would never forget. The night had crawled by with agonizing slowness, the monotonous hum of the fluorescent lights a constant reminder of the passing hours. Customers were scarce, their occasional visits providing a brief interruption to the tedious routine. Chris sat behind the counter, his chin resting on his hand, his eyes heavy with fatigue. He was lost in thought, the silence broken only by the gentle whir of the refrigerators, when the bell above the door chimed, signaling the arrival of a new customer. Chris looked up, his gaze falling upon a tall, gaunt figure silhouetted in the doorway. The stranger wore a long, dark coat that reached down to his ankles, its collar pulled up, obscuring his face from view. He stood motionless for a moment, his presence radiating an odd, unnerving aura. Chris felt a shiver run down his spine, a primal instinct warning him of danger. "Good evening, sir," Chris offered, his voice sounding unusually loud in the quiet store. The stranger didn't reply. He simply stood there, his presence growing more unsettling with each passing second. Chris watched as the stranger slowly made his way down the aisle, his movements stiff and unnatural. He could feel the stranger's gaze upon him, like a physical weight pressing down on him. The air grew thick with tension, the silence deafening. Finally, the stranger reached the counter, his hands emerging from the depths of his coat pockets. Chris's heart pounded in his chest, his mind racing with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. The stranger placed a single item on the counter, a pack of cigarettes. As Chris reached for the pack, his fingers brushed against the stranger's hand. It was ice cold, sending a jolt of fear through his entire body. He quickly rang up the purchase, his hands trembling slightly. The stranger said nothing, his gaze never leaving Chris's face. He paid in cash, his fingers long and bony, their touch sending shivers down Chris's spine. As the stranger turned to leave, Chris noticed something peculiar about his eyes. They glowed with an eerie, unnatural light, like two burning embers in the darkened store. The bell above the door chimed once more as the stranger disappeared into the night, leaving Chris in stunned silence. He stood there for a moment, his heart pounding in his chest, the weight of the stranger's presence lingering in the air. Chris couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong, that he had just encountered something sinister, something beyond the realm of human understanding. From that night forward, Chris couldn't shake the memory of the stranger, his chilling presence forever etched into his mind. He became increasingly wary of strangers, his once ordinary life now tainted by the encounter. The convenience store, once a beacon of warmth and familiarity, now felt cold and unsettling, a constant reminder of the night he came face to face with the unknown. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more terrifying tales. And remember, sometimes the scariest things happen when you least expect them. Stay safe, everyone.